It's 8 o'clock in the morning. I am sitting alone in a Dover, Delaware hotel room. The Golden Girls is playing on the television as I wonder what to do with my time as a stranger in a strange land. A wedding has brought me here, and oddly enough, that same wedding leaves me here with nothing to do. You see, I'm the only person in my group not in the wedding party. So here I am, with nothing really going on. Actually, strike that, that might not be completely accurate. Despite being hours away from the home office of the Golden Silent Films podcast, I am finding myself curious about what people from Delaware watched in the Nickelodeons and silent cinemas from Dover to Wilmington and everywhere in between. This episode is being written blind with zero early research having been done. This great state cinematic lore and backstory is being learned on the spot. The first state has to have some pretty cool silent film history, right? Hello everyone and welcome to a smaller episode of the Golden Silent Films podcast about a smaller state. If you are unaware, YouTube is the home of exclusive short-form content, any and all show updates, and other newsworthy reports. To stay up to date, follow us on Instagram, Bluesky, and Twitter or X. Oh, and while you're here on YouTube, like and subscribe and hit that notification bell. It means so much to our little growing channel. So, spoiler alert, if you're listening to this episode, that can only mean we've uncovered enough super cool film facts about the earliest days of filmmaking in the Blue Hen State that an episode was born. Let's start this statewide film crawl all the way back in 1903 and go to one of Delaware's earliest tourist attractions, Brandywine Springs Park. Over 120 years ago, the Edison Film Company produced a handful of short films depicting life at the historic Delaware amusement park. According to Delaware Public Media website, we see how these long-lost slices of life were rediscovered and returned to the public eye. The article reads, Historic Red Clay Valley's history chair Thomas Gears discovered the 9 short, black and white silent films from 1903 in the Library of Congress after an extensive search. Don't worry, we will hear more from Mr. Gears as the episode goes on. History abounds throughout Delaware and Brandywine Springs in particular. Long before Edison Films and roller coasters, Brandywine Springs played host to some major players in United States history. It once served as a location for Revolutionary War encampments for George Washington's troops. The 1820s would see the likes of John Quincy Adams, Henry Clay, and Daniel Webster frequent a 4-story resort at that location. For a good stretch, it was quite a popular destination. Despite the big-name clientele, though, and fancy digs, the following years would be kind of rough for the once destination location. The property would change hands numerous times between the late 1820s into the 1880s. Various people and businesses would give it a go only for things to fall apart eventually. That wild roller coaster of ownership would finally start to settle down as the region entered 1890. Just a few years earlier, tourism returned as resorts took advantage of the location's naturally occurring hot springs. That boom leads into the building of an amusement park built along the Hyde Run tributary. And that, fine folks, would be the Brandywine Springs Park in question. The park began its life in 1893 and experienced its greatest successes from 1900 to about 1915. Then came its gradual decline. A number of factors all chipped in to eventually bring down the popular amusement park, and in 1923, the doors were closed forever. Luckily, the park's legacy did not meet that same fate. The park had a lot of amenities that you'd expect from an amusement park of the era. You had the Katzenjammer Funhouse, the scenic railway ride, which was a roller coaster. You were also able to go to shooting galleries and a toboggan slide ride. Incidentally, Brandywine Springs Park also had a motion picture theater right in the middle. The discovery of these films about this amusement park was huge for Delaware lore and backstory. This find brought a dead and potentially forgotten piece of history back to moving, exciting life. In an interview with Delaware Public Media, Thomas Gears would explain, When I first saw them, I was ecstatic because these were sort of the holy grail for local historians. These are the oldest existing films made in Delaware, and they show Brandywine Springs Park alive, and we've only seen it in pictures. The series of films covered all sorts of events in the life of an early 1900s amusement park. There was one that shows a forerunner to the modern-day Tilt-A-Whirl called the Razzle Dazzle. You could also relive the park's yearly baby parade at a local Nickelodeon. Charles Musser, in his book Before the Nickelodeon, Edwin S. Porter and the Edison Manufacturing Company, recounts how filmmaker Alfred C. Abadi committed the Delaware amusement park to film. Musser writes, "That August, A.C. Abadi was at Coney Island filming Orphans in the Surf and Baby Class at Lunch, then retreated to Wilmington where he filmed outdoor scenes for N. Duchesne Cloward. Cloward, a traveling exhibitor who played churches and non-commercial venues during the theatrical season, opened a motion picture show in the Brandywine Springs Park for the summer of 1903. Musser continues, he arranged with the Edison Company to take local views that would attract patrons to his theater. Cloward had Abadi photograph a baby review and a maypole dance on August 21st. Together they organized the filming of Turning the Tables and the tub race at a local swimming hole. In the former, a policeman tries to chase a group of boys out of a forbidden swimming hole, but finds himself pushed into the water instead. The naughty boys break the law, but the law, rather than the boys, has to pay. Another favorite attraction captured on film was the miniature railway ride. We really knew very little about it, and now all of a sudden we see it and it's running, and there's kids on it, and everything else, Gears would say. It is so important to keep history alive, and silent films have proven time and time again to be the hero of those preservation stories. Those cinematic time capsules, though potentially, wouldn't be here today without the tireless efforts of the historians and film preservationists fighting so hard. Though I am but a first-time visitor here in Delaware, I obviously love history, and these shorts add a fascinating avenue of discovery. And it's not just old amusement parks when you talk about the cinematic legacy of Delaware. This mid-Atlantic state is home to a pretty solid list of actresses and actors through the years. That list, though, is a little back-heavy. I struggled to find a lot of native sons, but I did find a top-notch native daughter. Since this is short-form content geography lesson, we will keep our focus on this star to her Delaware roots. And that celebrity, folks, would be the lovely Estelle Taylor, a star of both stage and screen. Taylor was born on May 20th, 1894 in Wilmington, Delaware. Her father, Harry D. Taylor, was born in Harrington, Delaware, while her mother, Ida LaBertha Barrett, hailed from Easton, Pennsylvania. Estelle had a sister, Helen, born 4 years later, who, interestingly enough, would also become an actress in her own right. According to the 1900 census, the family lived in a rented house at 805 Washington Street in Wilmington. Estelle would eventually end up living with her grandparents in Delaware. Despite being born in Delaware, the bright lights of entertainment in New York City would beckon the young girl, but it would take more than a little convincing to win over her family. In the February 7, 1926 edition of the Delaware paper, the Sunday Morning Star, Taylor would recount her first brush with the pictures and her grandparents' reactions to it. Taylor, as told to Lillian Barker, would say, "I told you of my visit to the Lubin Studios in Philadelphia, and of the elation I felt when some very important-looking man, whose name I didn't know, said he might be able to use me on the following Thursday as an extra." Taylor continues, "That was Friday, and I had to return to my home in Wilmington that night. Just how to get back to Philadelphia at that appointed time was my problem. I knew my grandmother would put her foot down firmly against my going into pictures, and I wasn't at all sure I could wheedle Daddy, my grandfather, into giving his consent." The actress finishes saying, "So, during all the intervening days I thought and thought and thought. Finally I went to Daddy's piano store and asked him for the fare to Philadelphia, and of course had to explain to him why I wanted to go. But after much begging on my part, he said he would have to, quote, see grandmother about the matter. That whole plan went about as good as the teenage Estelle thought it would. Her grandfather took the request to old Granny, and a decision was made. Estelle Taylor never went back to the Lubin Studios again. Instead, she continued on in high school while the dreams of bright lights continued unabated. After some shenanigans, though, in school, Taylor eventually bailed, effectively ending her academic career. Shortly after, Estelle wound up posing and modeling for the noted Wilmington artist and illustrator Howard Pyle. Estelle explains, "After much urging, grandmother agreed that I might pose for Mr. Pyle, for, as she said, he's such a fine man, the association may be very pleasant for you, and besides, the experience may get those stage ideas out of your head." The model turned actress worked posing gigs for various Wilmington artists for approximately 2 years. She was paid $2 an hour and saved as much of that cash as humanly possible. That grind was all for the express reason of getting to New York and taking her shot at the big time and the bright lights. Leaving Wilmington was no easy feat for Taylor. She later recalled, "Grandmother went with me to the Wilmington station. We rode in a streetcar with my 2 suitcases. All the time I knew fate was driving me on. I felt very much alone in the big city, and I already was homesick. But there was no turning back for me. I was determined to carve out my career." And what an incredible career she did carve out. But that is all the time we have to talk about her Delaware upbringing, because we have to fast forward a bit, because now I find myself early the day after the wedding, back in action looking into the cinematic world of Delaware. Now, it was a fantastic night of matrimonial bliss, made all the more special by the location of the event. I cannot say enough great stuff about where this all went down, and it really added to my inspiration to tell the story of the silent cinematic Delaware. Now, don't worry, I'm not going to do what you think I'm going to do. I'm not going to review the nuptials, and there will be no snide input from podcast favorite reviewer Morden Hall. There is a method to my madness here, actually, so just stick with me, folks, and I think it's going to turn out really cool. The wedding happened at the Delaware Agricultural Museum in the capital city of Dover. This museum was super cool in and of itself, but it also featured an 1890s village. It was a remarkable experience walking through this village, immersing myself in Delaware of the late 1800s. It really was special watching the nuptials and the recreation of a really old church. It really put the day and event on a special level. If you find yourself in Dover or a Dover-adjacent area, please check this museum out. And if you're listening to this podcast and the YouTube channel, you obviously have an appreciation for history. It is incredibly worth visiting and for the full immersion into a bygone world, while also picking up some great glimpses into Delaware history. Now, I bring all that up to say that where you watch something really adds so much magic to the whole experience. Whether it's attending a wedding in a vintage church or enjoying a movie in a movie theater, the where really matters. Before we left the great state of Delaware, I couldn't pass up the chance to chat about the perfect cinematic marriage of a Delaware audience and theater. We start our location scouting in Lewis, Delaware, where the auditorium started life as the Lewis Town Hall. Yes, its a proper name would become the auditorium. It opened for business in 1908, hosting vaudeville shows, local plays, and silent films. The building was 2 stories tall and was located at 334 Savannah Road. From everything I've read, it was a really great place to catch a silent movie. Well, as long as you were free one of the 3 days the auditorium was showing movies. You see, throughout the 1920s, the auditorium only showed films on Saturdays, Mondays, and Tuesdays. Roughly 17 minutes and 11 miles away, silent film fans of the era also had the option of attending the Milton Theater. This movie house was erected around 1910-ish and began life as the Fox Theater, named after Ida Fox, who owned and operated the theater. In a cool bit of bonus history, Ida Fox was one of the first female theater managers in the United States. This theater has lived quite the life. According to the Milton Theater website, we read, "The Milton Theater, located in historic downtown Milton, Delaware, has had an illustrious history in its more than 100-year existence. The 2-story building served at one time or another as the town's movie theater, basketball hall, fire station, social center, and community stage. Various retail businesses and restaurants also thrived there. It has survived 3 major fires, countless nor'easters, and decades of neglect, but now it proudly stands as a hub of artistic culture, not just to the town of Milton, but to the Delmarva Peninsula." And that, folks, brings my time as a silent movie Rand McNally to an end. It was a fun historical romp that saw 2 people who love each other more than anything say "I do," while I, personally, said "I do" to some great historical tidbits about the Blue Hen State. If you want to learn more about the Golden Silent Films podcast, you can find us on Instagram and Bluesky at Golden Silence Cast and on Twitter or X at Golden Silence 1. And while you're here on YouTube, like, subscribe, and hit that bell for notifications. Your support means so much to us here on the road to 100 subscribers. And don't forget, The silents are golden, and the talkies, they're just a fad.